Hello everyone, this is Crota giving you a shoutcast between LiquidTLO and MadFrog here on Metalopolis. Here we have MadFrog spawning as the red Zerg player against LiquidTLO spawning as the yellow Terran. Now these are show matches. Now if you were following the StarCraft Twitter, I believe these show matches were posted up on ESL. ESL TV, or they're shoutcasted there, so just giving you some English commentary on these games. Back over here, Command Center now training up some SCVs as well. Back over here, Hatchery now excuse me, Hatchery continuing to train up units. We should probably see MadFrog training up an Overlord and then go into that standard 10 drone. He does not do the extractor trick and that some of the Zerg players do in fact use. Back over here, TLO spawning or placing down a 10 supply depot, gonna most likely follow it up with a 12 racks, and MadFrog really likes to open up with a more economic play. I'm expecting to see some sort of 14 or probably a 15 hatchery. MadFrog has been opening up with that. I think he likes that particular opening against Terran, as the Terran players really have a hard time trying to do any sort of real pressure. We now have a scouting drone coming out, and this drone may determine whether TLO goes for that early hatchery or goes for that spawning pool. If he sees that it is a close spawn here, he may decide to just try to lay down the spawning pool, and we'll see how it's going to work out. Now getting up to 15/19. Gonna go head up this ramp, see this over there. Now gonna get some quick sight, and no, still going for that hatchery as well. So going for that early hatchery and training up over here. Drone now making its way through the base, getting a lot of just sight into this base as a barracks being placed in a curious position, not quite in the wall off position, as the SCV getting some damage onto that drone. Drone down to 22 hit points, able to regenerate very, very slowly on that life there, as that drone continuing the juke. So just moving around, just clicking around in the circle for that SCV. SCV deciding to not chase anymore as that barracks nearing completion. Drone just sitting there now, denying that tech lab. Now it's going to move up, and will that drone be able to get there in time? Oh, yes, able to get there in time, and just continuing to delay this tech lab, and nicely done. And oh, denies it again. So well, very nicely done by MadFrog, delaying that tech lab for a couple moments, and also essentially delaying the command center as he was forced to continue that micro. Tech lab now being thrown down again, thrown down here as a supply depot being raised into that position. So we're probably going to see a swap of units there. We may see one Marauder trained up first. No Marauders being trained as this hatchery going to be completed. No Spine Crawler transfers, however. We do have a queen now being trained up at the hatchery over here at the main base, and now looks like we're gonna have a spine crawler being trained up or morphed over here at the natural expansion. Back over here we have what Reapers now being built. So a very early Reaper, instead of the Marauder that I was assuming, that Reaper will be able to jump off and try to do some early scouting. And now we should have a Hellion being trained up, and now a Marine. Okay, this is a little confusing as opposed to what strategy the TLO is really going for. Training up a Hellion, training up a Marine. There is one Spine Crawler in position, so it will be able to protect this ramp over here. This Reaper may try to get in some damage somehow. Perhaps try to take down some of these drones from that far edge. That Spine Crawler looking to try to strike on that Reaper. Reaper now down to 20 hit points. Reaper now doing a little bit of that shoot and scoot or shoot and hover ability of that Reaper. Reaper moving around fairly well. Hellion also moving in. Hellion moving much more quickly, and now Hellion and a Reaper doing that harassment. So that Hellion and Reaper want to keep that distance against that Queen and that Spine Crawler over here. Now getting trapped up against the corner, so that Queen getting one kill, and Hellion now driving home. We see a barracks now being lifted off and then lowered back. And as we have a factory now throwing down a tech lab, not quite sure why they didn't do a swap there. Probably wants to research the Infernal Pre-Igniter, and that little blue flame that does additional 10 damage towards light units. So more Hellions now being trained. One Marauder sitting there. Army-wise, we have 450 Mineral Army for TLO versus 175 for MadFrog. Over here, Spine Crawlers in position, ready. 3 Hellions perhaps will be able to get in some significant damage in over here, and now 3 of those Hellions unable to take down any real drones there, and they are starting to stack up a little bit more, and that's exactly what Hellions want to see. Drones stacking up on top of each other. but still unable to get any additional kills off, and more Hellions being trained. We are getting siege tech, not getting the infernal pre-igniter as I originally thought, and now calling down a supply drop, an orbital supply drop in order to get out of that supply lock. So really needed to call down extra supplies. That supply depot now worth 16 food, always a very big target. When you're a Zerg player or a Protoss player, seeing one of those that has a supply drop, you really want to take them down, as it's a 200, essentially a 200 mineral building right there. So very important, and 16 food is usually enough to cause a supply lock against a Terran player. Zergling sitting over here may be able to make it up the ramp. No, unable to. A quick reaction by a siege tank, able to shoot that down. Hellions making their way over here, but the Zerglings, with that very fast movement speed of 4.7, able to escape and now get away. A siege tank now coming in. Siege tank does have siege tech. A bunker being placed down, and TLO now doing just being very aggressive, maybe able to get in a marauder as well into that position over here. Zerglings now taking down the SCV. Very poor play by TLO, as being forced to use that extra SCV that he brought just in case that happened. I guess it's not too poor, as he already had a backup plan. This bunker will be completed in just a mere moment, and these siege tanks will start to be able to stagger step their way into position just in case there is any sort of Zergling rush. However, Marauder or Roach is now coming in, so those Marauders may need to jump into that bunker and try to deal with this whole entire attack force here. Bunker, yeah, go ahead and jump into there. Siege tanks got within that 0 range, but those Roaches didn't want to take the fire from those Marauders. Once again, jumping back into that bunker, and now that Broodlords or Broodlings now coming out of that hatchery that was taken down. So MadFrog now running off of one base and only 33 harvesters compared to 28. Siege tanks should start stair-stepping their way in, taking down the spine crawlers, and now we have a Thor joining the army and joining the fight. Things not looking good for MadFrog. MadFrog gonna be forced to just play a more defensive game here, uprooting that spine crawler. Siege tanks now moving in. Spine crawler nearing rooting. Gonna go ahead and be rooted, and this siege tank just outside of sight range there, now finally blasting away at that spine crawler. Spine crawler is being transfused, trying to move around, and now getting caught off guard there. So Roach is now on this high ground, but there is one Thor and a couple Marauders. These siege tanks out of siege mode should be able to deal a lot of damage towards these Roaches as well. Will they try to push into siege mode or not? Now a quick scanner sweep revealing them. Siege tanks now moving in. A Thor trying to hold on to that position, quickly getting taken down as Roach is now moving in. Very nice, just doing that shoot and attack and taking down a lot of TLO's army. But a second Thor now joining in on this fight. A lot of those Roaches very low on hit points. Gonna go ahead and try to do some sort of surround. Thors move very slowly as one siege tank coming in. Will the Roaches be able to finish it off there? Trying to get some splash damage. Yeah, able to get the splash damage, and now surrounding this siege tank. Siege tank down to 25 hit points. Getting taken down by very low hit point Roaches. One Roach already down to 3 hit points. No burrow to be researched. And MadFrog really should consider getting a burrow at some point in order to try to regenerate some of these Roaches. A very low hit point Roach, I believe, was actually transfused instead. Yeah, perhaps transfused. And now TLO going to be playing a more defensive game. Siege tanks on the high ground to try to blast away at these Roaches as they come up. No concussive shell research. Really needs the concussive shell research against those Roaches as they have a difficult time pushing into the main base. What army-wise, it's pretty even. 850 versus 900 Roaches deciding to back off, not wanting to engage. Another hatchery being placed down over here. Drones now making their way perhaps over here, trying to set up another expansion. Hellions moving around, doing some scouting, making sure TLO wants to make sure that MadFrog has not set up an expansion elsewhere around the map, as we have very low SCV count. Kind of surprised by this. Only 31 SCVs for TLO. So TLO really has been slacking off in this macro game, taking this high yield mineral location, and also having one Zergling guarding this Zelnaga watchtower. Roaches over here scampering about. Perhaps we'll try to push on into this position, but there are siege tanks on this high ground trying to protect this ramp here, and perhaps even siege tanks should be placed here and here. Missile turrets now coming in, most likely TLO suspecting that a Spire is coming in, but no, we are getting research for burrow and tunneling claws. There is one missile turret guarding sight on top of this ramp over here, so those Roaches will not be able to walk very, very easily into the base of TLO. These are detectors, so those detectors will detect the burrowed movement of these roaches. Thor is still being trained up, so it looks like it's going to be a very, very mech army for TLO with some marauders to boot. Back over here, roaches now being able to move very, very quickly, getting perhaps that additional regeneration, and now going to go ahead and burrow themselves here. Those roaches are able to regenerate a lot of hit points very, very easily while burrowed, but are going to catch sight. Yeah, going to catch sight of those units there. They're caught sight, and now going to go ahead and unburrow, moving out, trying to take down some of those units there. Siege Tank's able to get off a very, very quick hit. Going to go ahead and burrow, and you're going to see how fast these roaches regenerate. Almost 7 damage a second. So all of these roaches have been fully regenerated, as MadFrog now placing down some spine crawlers over here to try to set up another expansion at these gold minerals. Roach is now moving around the backside, gonna go after this refinery here, gonna take down that refinery fairly easily. And now perhaps are we gonna get a burrow? No, not gonna get a burrow. No concussive shells though, so that is a mistake, I believe, by LiquidTLO. No concussive shells, so those units are able to move very, very easily around the map. We do have a Raven now being trained up, trained up at the starport, and so that Raven will be able to detect these roaches, and that's exactly what TLO needs. However, MadFrog able to run off of 3 bases very easily economic-wise, and TLO with those mules giving a little bit of a stronger economic advantage. Once again, burrowing, a quick scanner sweep, and roaches now trying to scamper away, trying to move around. Those roaches have a faster movement speed now, but it's really getting torn apart by that quick nice scanner sweep, followed with a Raven in the air. That Raven now pulling back once again. Roaches scampering away, perhaps should burrow just to regenerate some hit points. MadFrog sitting on a hatchery over here, and now at Hive Tech, but I do not see anything that really would show show any sort of Hive Tech. No Ultralisk so far, no Broodlords. We do see a Spire coming into play, so a Spire should be a very interesting addition to this army as well. Javelin missile launchers now coming out as roaches moving around. Zerglings now just trying to completely bypass this army here. This very, very slow Terran army, as we have a Raven in the air. And now in come these Zerglings. Zerglings now moving around. Roaches just able to deal a lot of damage. And this may become a base trade. Not very, very smart to try to base trade with a Terran player. Out moves an Infestor. Infestor taken down by that Marauder dealing 20 damage towards that Roach, or that Infestor over here. Roach is now moving in and just taking down and dealing a lot of damage over here. Gonna start supply locking. A lot of SCVs now taken down as well, so very taking a lot of damage. And if you take a look at the Harvester count, now down to 3 Harvesters. TLO in a desperate trouble, but trying to do a base trade as these Marauders, Thors, and Siege Tanks moving through. Stay tuned for part 2 of this replay between LiquidTLO and a MadFrog here on Metalopolis.